Over the past 15 years, the Cocoa Association of Asia has grown from a small organisation into one serving a wide range of businesses across the region. We speak to Alvin Lee, its recently appointed chair, on some of the major challenges facing companies in the sector, as well as looking ahead for the rest of 2021.
Sure. So I've actually been involved with the association in an exco role actually already for the last 5 years now. So back in 16, I rejoined Cocoa actually after a short hiatus away. So I mentioned earlier that I was with ADM Cocoa, and I returned to Singapore in 2012 in a role on the dairy side, so still very much confectionery linked. And 3 years later, I found myself back in the good company of Cargill. So specifically in the cocoa division for the brand new greenfield factory they had just built in Indonesia. I quickly found myself back in the fray again with the Cocoa Association of Asia, which had changed quite a fair bit, I would say, from its early days. So obviously when I first joined the industry in 2007, I was privy to some of the first few meetings because that was held in actually in the I think it was an employee canteen converted into a badminton court, and subsequently they put in a small packing line there, but it was on the premises of ADM Cocoa actually. So it's quite a dark little danky room, but that was the association back then, and that was where the first meetings were held. And fast forward, some 7-8 years, we're holding meetings in somewhat nicer venues, I guess, and the whole association has grown. I think that the one underlying purpose of the association was to actually create an Asian cocoa contract. So a contract that was pertaining specifically to Asian cocoa processors' needs, I guess. And I think that idea was, feasible for the first few years. I think association was formed in 2004 formally, and that idea had some traction to it when the Indonesian cocoa crop used to be much bigger. But obviously, when I rejoined Cocoa in 2015, the Indonesian cocoa crop had shrunk quite dramatically by then. And I think what I noticed was that this concept of an Asian cocoa contract running on Asian cocoa specs, was becoming more and more a distant pipe dream. So when we rejoined the association, and I think in that first iteration of the council that I joined, with Richard Fahey, who's my counterpart from Barry Calabout, he was the chair. And I think we very quickly came to the realization that, look, for the association to be something more than a quarterly, get together coffee club, we need to basically turbo boost the agenda. We need to really ask what's in it for our members. We need to ask what else can we do for the membership, and how do we really want this association position itself, right? So I think I would argue, from my perspective at least, the beginning of the transformation of the CAA in that sense. I thought it was important to try and step up and carry on with some of the good work that had been put in, so that there was continuity with the agenda. And I think, at least from my personal perspective, right, I think Cocoa has given me so much in my life, in my career, that for me it's a way of giving back, right? In the last 4 or 5 years, I pride myself on being someone who's been fairly vocal and active in the community for Cocoa. Whether it's on the association side, whether it's in planning new sort of initiatives for the industry. I'm glad, I'm honored that a lot of my peers saw it that way and elected me to run elected me as chair for this iteration of the council.
Great. It sounds as if you're very proud to be taking up the role, and would that be fair to say?
No, I'm really proud. It's a great industry, obviously, out here. It's a really close-knit bunch of people, of peers, friends. I would call many of them. So I'm delighted, because I think, obviously in the association role, the agenda is very much different from your day job, and I think it does challenge me constantly to think about broader industry type issues, and to try and wear different hats to be a bit more inclusive. So it's great. It's really good for me on a personal level as well, for pushing my perspective on how things are. And I get great perspective from, whether it's from customers, auxiliary providers, and even competitors on some of the challenges that face them in their space, and how the CAA can help in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, can you sum up for us, how challenging the past year has been, and what your expectations of a recovery are at present?
Yeah, so I think a large part of the cocoa and chocolate space obviously gets a lot of its joy, if you will, its customer base from traveling, from entertainment. That's a huge contributor, and obviously with the pandemic, a huge swath of that were just shut down overnight, literally. So that's on a bit more of the macro front. I think if we look at our membership, we have had all kinds of curveballs thrown at us, from and Asia is obviously multiple countries, kind of an issue. So we're not one operating union, so we have had many different experiences from many different or challenges, if you will, from members located in different geographies. Whether it's in Malaysia or in Singapore, when we've had shut down, orders related to circuit breaker measures pertaining to the pandemic, and consequently how factories have strived to sort of balance that with the need to run and keep supply chains stocked, so that people can continue to enjoy your favorite products in that regard, right? And I think to say chocolate is an affordable luxury is one thing, but also, obviously in Asia, a huge portion of it also goes into items that people will consider as staples, whether it's powdered beverages, into flavored milks, into biscuits, baked goods. So there's a huge range that of foods, that go beyond your indulgences, like chocolates that the industry serves. So it was very challenging and very important that the membership and the association at least fought to keep things up and going during that challenging period we had last year.
And do you see sort of signs of recovery as we're moving through into 2021? Are things beginning to pick up in the market from your perspective?
Yeah, cautiously optimistic on that front. I think a lot of it is heavily dependent on the vaccine rollout and the efficacy of a vaccine rollout. And again, even within the Asia Pacific region, we see different levels of efficiency, if you will, with regards to the vaccine rollout. Different countries have had different access to that. So I think, it's not going to be a very even recovery in that sense, but overall, there are bright shoots of the recovery. I think what we fear as an industry, because ultimately at the end of the day, Asia is much more a cocoa powder consuming space than chocolate, and the Western Hemisphere is still more where the support for the chocolate and the cocoa butter leg of our processing comes from. And that that space, from your perspective, you tell me, but I would argue that that's still a bit more iffy in that regard, and the second or third wave, whatever you guys want to call it, is still extremely problematic. Not that it's not problematic out here, but I would say that when you look at that, then that throws in another curveball to how we expect a recovery to go. But overall, I think we as an industry are cautiously optimistic that vaccine rollouts, at their own respective paces, depending on the geography, should bring about some sort of recovery in demand.
No, that's interesting and good to hear that was likely to be the case. But obviously, there are no crystal balls as to deciding or knowing how the future is going to pan out in the coming months. But we can just be optimistic. And just coming on to the work of the association itself, can you talk a little bit about how you're actually engaging with members and trying to help them through this difficult time?
Yeah, so I think with the membership and all that, look, we're a Singapore-based association, so we do have geographical restrictions, if you will. We have members operating in Singapore, during the pandemic when some of these circuit breaker related decrees or orders went out, association was there, talking to our government counterparts to sort of have or explain why there needed to be sort of like specific work permission allowances given to some of our member companies here in Singapore. We participate in similar initiatives also in Malaysia, for that matter. I think late in the year, I think one curveball that was thrown at our membership, particularly those in Malaysia, was around a proposed freight increase for beans from Ghana into Malaysia. And the association, was quick in writing to our counterparts in Ghana about, sort of, hey guys, let's look at this. This is not the best time to do something like this. Can we review it? And can we put it on hold, because people are struggling enough as it is, and as late in the game as this is, this would really, hurt our members and their customers, who probably don't have any recourse against that in terms of passing price increases on. So I think the association has tried, to be more effective in such matters. The honest truth is, I hope there are less of such matters to deal with. Less drama, less curveballs. But I hope the membership sees that at least where there have been curveballs thrown around the region, we've acquitted ourselves fairly well in that regard.
So, if you could kindly explain for us a bit about how your role as chair with the association contrasts with your general day job with Cargill, who are going to be part of our World Confectionery Conference as a sponsor for the event this summer.
So what I do in Cargill is I'm the commercial director for Asia Pacific for our cocoa and chocolate division out here. I basically run three of our functions. One around sourcing, and the other around risk management, and the last piece is around what we call product line management. So sourcing is the physical origination of cocoa beans to feed our state-of-the-art facility out in Gresik, Indonesia, our cocoa factory out there. So we source both in Indonesia and internationally as well, from across all regions, whether it's South America or West Africa or East Africa. We're very active internationally in that regard. The piece around risk management is something that obviously we are extremely well known for, I hope, and that we continue to acquit ourselves well in. But basically we hedge everything that we do, and in cocoa it's a fairly complex sort of cycle from buying the beans to actually selling the product, and we have all sorts of risks in between related to market movements, the differential movements. So that is the purpose of our futures and risk management function in that sense. And then the last piece is around what we call product line management. So that's a lot around figuring out, okay, we don't sell, especially for us, is a cocoa processing play. We don't sell the cocoa butter and the cocoa powder at exactly the same time. Which legs, how much of which legs do we sell? How do we price this properly such that we actually can make a little money to have on the side in that regard. How do we prevent selling too much of one leg versus the other leg and having a big risk event on our books. There's also obviously the piece around listening to customers and trying to figure out, okay, this is what customers want today. How do we design the right product portfolio that will help us stay in business and thrive 10, 15, 20 years from now as well. So that's those are the functions that I help to lead, and obviously I have a fantastic team working with me both in Singapore and in KL and in Indonesia. So that's basically in a nutshell what I do for Cargill, and it's kind of what I've done for the last what is it now, coming up to 6 years actually, that I've been with them. And yeah, I love it. I mean, it's every day is different, and it is a really challenging role and then a fulfilling one at the same time.